So there was a video that I watched just a few seconds ago in which a very anti-democrat slash extremely Republican woman basically was trying to say that for some odd reason, Canadians need to be held accountable to her viewpoint of reality. Why she thought that a country that wasn't even her own needed to be held accountable to her viewpoint of reality, I'm not entirely sure. Now, the exact YouTube channel that was saying this, I don't know. Excuse me. I put a link to the YouTube channel in question in the description below. So if you want to go, it's actually a link to the exact video that I was watching. So if you want to go check, figure out what the ding dong the YouTube channel is and find out what was being said, you can. Here's the thing. The video in question, well, the concept that she was harping on was talking about card equity. I'm not completely 100% familiar with what the ding dong was going on, but it was in Ontario, Canada, apparently. One of the people speaking was talking about it. From what I could gather from the short, first of all, it's a short, so you don't get a humongous amount of context. And apparently that's what this lady wanted to do. You don't have enough context to actually make an informed decision about the situation. You're just supposed to have just enough context for her to sound right, and that's it. No, if I'm going to make an informed opinion about this, I need the full context from both sides. Anyway, so what it appeared to be was some sort of debate system. You had pro, whatever it is, con, whatever it was. It's what I think they were talking about. And if you held a yellow card, you were con, whatever it was. If you held a purple card, you were pro, whatever it was. I believe that's what the system was. Because, like I said, I couldn't figure it out from the tiny little bit of information that was being supplied. But the people in question were holding up their cards saying that I held one of these cards and I was ignored. Or I didn't hold this card, someone else who held one of these cards used it inappropriately. And then the person who was making the video said, are there such thing as reality cards, as common sense cards? Well, could I do you a quick favor? I can answer that question for you. No. Because what you're calling common sense isn't common sense. What you're calling reality isn't reality. So no, there aren't. Guess what common sense is? Common sense is the ability to use logic in whatever time period you're living in. What you're calling common sense is people adhering to your opinion about reality around you. That's not common sense. It's like, take for example, people around me love to think that it's common sense that men are better than women. Well, would it surprise you to know that common sense in the men versus women debate actually looks like this? Men are standardly stronger than women. Women tend to mature faster than men of the exact same age bracket. Aside from those two facts, men and women are equal to each other. So, do you see what I'm doing here? Common sense says to take any fact that sets the group apart from the other one, display that fact, and then say the truth. Common sense, the way that they're trying to use it, looks like this. Men are stronger, men are smarter, men are... In what universe is that true? It isn't. That's stereotype. For example, there's a stereotype that says if one parent, by the way, I'm not a parent, but for sake of illustration, Cass is laying over there. I am most probably autistic, not diagnosed, but most people would assume that I have what used to be referred to as Asperger's. Now it's called ASD. OCD, a mild to severe, depending on the day, case of depression / anxiety. Anything else that goes on that list, or did I get all of them? We'll just go with that for right now. Mm-hmm. So, almost assuredly autistic, though not diagnosed with anything. Then you got also almost assuredly autistic, diagnosed with a few things, but I'm, as far as I can tell, the things that Cass is diagnosed with, excuse me, the things that Cass is diagnosed with, I guess aren't technically considered autistic. He'd have to confirm or deny that for me.
No.
Okay. So, both of us are not diagnosed with autism, but it's almost 100% plausible to say that we are both. So, if we ended up having a kid, there are people out there that believe it is common sense that we should not procreate because the autism in our systems would pass down to our kids. That's not common sense. That's assumed science. Common sense in this case has nothing to do with genetics. Common sense says that if there are two parents who are both excuse me if you could hear that, but are both potentially autistic, that they need to work even harder to try to give their kid a fair upbringing. That's common sense. So, why did I make this video at all? Because I've got a big pet peeve about people trying to use a phrase and clearly knowing nothing about its actual meaning. By the way, this is also similar to yesterday while I was at work, and Cass almost 100% knows exactly where this is going at this point. So, this video that I was watching clearly doesn't know what common sense is. Common sense is using normal logic and applying it to your time period. This person didn't know what it is. Yesterday at work, someone accused me of using a straw man argument. I'm not going to name the individual, but somebody accused me of using a straw man argument. I'm going to ask Cass this because I don't want to toot my own horn or not toot my own horn. So, Cass.
What?
I already asked you this yesterday, but I still want to get your feedback. Am I intelligent enough to know when and how to properly use a straw man argument if it's necessary?
Yes, baby, you're very smart.
Now, yesterday when I was describing the situation to Cass, my wording was something along the lines of, in the 1 to 2 seconds directly following being accused of using a straw man argument, I mentally went back through the conversation and confirmed that I had not used a straw man argument. Yes, it took me only a couple seconds to figure that out. So here's the problem that I was having with that. You believe that I used a straw man argument. I can tell that I didn't use a straw man argument. What does that tell me? And here's where common sense comes into play. If I know for a fact, and by the way, I am not the world's most skilled debater, but I am good enough at debating that I know the most common arguments and how they are used. So I know what a straw man argument is. And I know how to avoid using one unless it's actually applicable to use one. So I knew exactly what that phrase means. The fact that he was trying to use it against me says one of two things. Either, one, you do know what a straw man argument is and you just don't really know how to use it properly. Or two, you've heard of that before and just don't know what the ding-dong it is. And it became very obvious very fast that the second one was the case. This guy just doesn't know what it is. He's heard of it, he enjoys debating, and just decided to use it as... Oh boy. I had the word right before I went to say it. Hang on a second. Why do I feel like the word's catfishing? I forgot the term off the top of my head. Leave it in the comments if you know what the term is I'm trying to think of. The debating tactic of skirting around something by just completely avoiding the topic altogether. For some reason, I feel like it's called catfishing, but I don't think that's it.
No, catfishing is completely different.
Okay, so it's not catfishing. I can't off the top of my head remember what the actual thing is I'm trying to think of. Anyway, so it's the same concept as someone calls you out or asks a question that would call you out on saying something wrong. And instead of actually acknowledging it, you start trying to start a different topic of conversation. So, like I said, leave in the comments below if you know what that term is. I just completely blanked. I cannot remember what that term is off the top of my head. I know I've heard it before and I've used it before. I just can't think of it. But whatever that term is, he did that. So that basically helped me just figure out, okay, he clearly just enjoys debating for the sake of debating. He doesn't actually know how to do it properly.
Obviously.
Very funny.
Baby. Obviously.
Obviously. So, that being said, what exactly does that mean for people like me? Sit. Good girl. If I'm facing a bunch of people that don't know what they're talking about, like at all, and I'm going to caveat for a second, but I'll come right back to the point I'm trying to make with this one. Two, it has a little caveat to point. here's the caveat. Most people that know me well are aware that my brain doesn't run off of any specific informational feedback. Meaning, like, for example, back when, my brain was focused almost completely on what does the Bible say? 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 What does blah blah blah. And I could, because even though I am not the absolute expert on the Bible, compared to most people that I'm constantly in contact with, I am an expert on it because I can quote Bible verses that they are trying to reference and just don't know what the Bible verse says. I'm not an expert on the Constitution, but I've studied it enough recently that I can quote passages that most people don't even know what the ding dong I'm talking about. So, I have enough cursory knowledge of the things that I use to structure my arguments, and enough logic, which that's the crux point. My brain runs mostly off of logic. I have a good enough understanding of logical processes, logical arguments, and I try my best not to use logical arguments that are just fallacious. For example, the straw man argument, I try not to use that. Most of my logic is based off of pointing out common sense or illogic in other people's arguments. Not the straw man argument. I don't take their comment and blow it out of proportion. What I do is I take what their comment was, and break it down into its fundamentals. Blowing it up and breaking it down are two separate things. My preferred method is to break it down. So I'm logical enough to be able to have a full-blown conversation without getting myself into trouble. So I generically know enough to have a realistic debate. Some people who have debated with me or discussed stuff with me can confirm that. And my brain runs almost completely off of logic. I like to think of myself as running off of common sense and logic. The problem is, if you're a person like the lady in the video that I was describing, like I said, link in the description below. If you're a person like that lady, I can't debate or discuss anything with you because you will not accept the fact that common sense is not what you think it is. And if we can't even come to an understanding of the fundamental, if we can't come to an understanding of the fundamental before we get into points based off of that fundamental, then how exactly are we supposed to have a conversation? It's like, I'm going to try not to name anybody by name right here, but it's kind of like yesterday. Most of you are aware that I refer to myself as a theistic Satanist. Do you have any idea how many people hear the word Satanist and immediately assume that means that I worship the father of all evil? I don't worship the Christian concept of Satan. I don't even worship him, so to speak. I personally look up to Lucifer as the benevolent liberator of the human race. So how exactly does that fit into the concept that I worship the person who is the most evil person on the face of the planet? It doesn't. What people are doing is they're taking one word and they're building their opinion about an entire people group off of one word without bothering to check to figure out if they're right. And here's the funny part. If you simply politely ask a Satanist, they're almost always going to be more than willing to just politely explain their beliefs. Not try to indoctrinate you, just explain what they believe. And then guess what? Bingo! Now all of a sudden I know exactly what it is you believe, and I can actually make a realistic response. But no, instead of trying to make a realistic response based off of what they told you or what you checked to figure out is what they believe, you just blindly assume that, oh, Satan, you believe this. No, I don't. Yes, you do. 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 To see the problem here? So, all that being said to say this. If people can't even bother to use the true meaning of what they're supposedly using, why would I trust them? Why would I take them seriously? It's like with me. If somebody wanted to decide, do I trust Jaden or do I not trust Jaden? They're probably going to go through my videos and double check what I'm saying. Well, they're not. Okay, they're probably not. What they're going to do is they're going to go through the videos I've made explaining what I believe about something and decide without checking anything if they agree with it. So it's not based off of, is reality matching what he says? Is what he says sensible? Is what he says true based off of what he's talking about? No, it's just, do I agree with it or do I not agree with it? Please do the world around you a favor. Do society around you a favor. Do humanity around you a favor. Be decent enough to actually check facts. Find facts. Not just your opinion. Quite frankly, nobody cares about your opinion because nobody expects you to care about theirs.